Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Elevate Voices. My name is Vanessa Codorniu, and this is a conversation series started by myself, Tatiana Delapiane, and Christine Gutierrez. We started this series because we witnessed a lack of diversity in the wellness and spirituality communities. We decided it was time to change that. It is our deep intention to inspire dialogue and elevate diverse voices. Now we know that there are no quick and easy solutions. In fact, this is only the beginning, but this series is our attempt in creating space for change. And today we have an amazing guest. We welcome our sister Sonali Fiske. Hello, Sonali.
Hello, Vanessa and Tatiana. It's a joy and privilege to be with you. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you said yes. And we are beyond grateful to have you as part of this conversation of elevating voices and discussing culture, spirituality, diversity, and the lack of it. And really, this is just heartfelt conversations on our experiences as healers, as artists, as change makers in this field of spirituality. And to our guests, welcome. We'd love you to just really, sit down, connect to your deepest awareness, to your desire to have these conversations and to join us. Thank you for being here. So, Sonali, I've been looking so forward to meeting and connecting with you. I would love to have you share a little bit, about yourself
Mm.
and your journey and how your culture has inspired and informed the work that you're doing now.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for that. And it's an interesting question you're asking me because the landscape is shifting so rapidly, and my own journey is shifting with it, that who I am and what I represent and how I identify is also moving and expanding with that, right?
Yeah.
So, when we do these kinds of events and interviews, we're often asked for a bio. And I always struggle with that because, right? How do you contain this expansive, beautiful, magical journey into these one-dimensional stick figures on paper? But I deeply am grateful to you for asking me who I am and what I do. But for the sake of this event, I'll tell you that um, my joy and my passion is to center the voices of woman identifying sisters of color. These are immigrant women, hijabi women, Latina women, Black sisters, our indigenous women, who I still feel are often sidelined and suppressed and, not centered enough. Um, that a lot of our online and live events are still very much centered, and opportunities like that are given to white women. And I feel our sisters of color have so much to say right now. And I feel they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting in our social justice causes and in our country and in our world. And they're speaking up, but they're not being heard. So it is my joy and my honor to hold space for their voices and their truth and their narrative to come forth and to be centered.
Thank you for that. And for anybody watching, could you define what centered is? Maybe not everybody watching knows, maybe there's some things around it, right? Because we're
Yeah,
all learning. So maybe
good
somebody
question.
watching. Yeah.
That's a good question. Thank you for that, Vanessa. Again, that's shifting for me too. You know, the languaging we're using and the words that we choose to use to describe the work we're doing, that's shifting too, Vanessa. Meaning, when I started off this work, it was all about bringing these women into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
But now what I'm finding is we're not here to blend into the mainstream or into the prevailing narrative in order to help diversify and help appease those curators and organizers that are looking to check in that box of color. I really feel centering for me means bringing these women into their truth and being unapologetically real about who they are, right? It's not about bringing them into the existing table, but building a table of our own. To me, that's what centering is, you know? Um, because clearly the table isn't big enough or long enough to, right, allow these voices to be heard. And so it's up to us to build our own table. So that's what I mean by centering.
I love that. I love that. And we've been talking about building our own table, right? Tatiana with Christine, who's not here today.
Yeah.
How do you see us doing that at this, even at this moment? I know that you've done the telesummit and you can talk, share that with us. How do you
I'd love
see
to
us
hear
doing
about your
that?
telesummit that you just had recently. I don't know the name, but please, if you can share about that as well.
Sure, I'd love to. And to answer your question, Vanessa, how do we do that? Exactly this. What you and Tatiana are doing with your vision, how boldly you're stepping out and centering these voices. This is how you're doing it. You're taking up space, being unapologetically real, and not making any excuses for it, right? You're calling it out and being real. This is the time for this. And yet there's so much compassion in what you're doing too. You're raising us. And thank you for mentioning that, Tatiana. I did just now wrap my own masterclass, I called it, on, and I really felt that was the right terminology for it, because these women were giving so much, gracing us with their wisdom and ancestral ways, that it was a masterclass called oh my goodness, what was it called? Dismantling White Dominance in Women's Entrepreneurship, Potent Conversations with Black Indigenous Women of Color, Countering the Current Narrative. And I know that's a mouthful, but it was such a powerful experience, sisters, as I'm sure you will be experiencing throughout this. But it was received with so much love and goodness. It was overwhelmingly successful, not just in terms of the amount of women that opted into the series, but just how much growth and expansion and goodness it created in the community. And with these sister speakers who gave so much of themselves, it was very liberating and very cathartic for a lot of us to say some of these things that we've been guarding in that safe container, in that masterclass, which is, I feel, will be very similar to what you will be achieving in yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And so, how did you come to this work? I know that it's been shifting, it's been changing. Was it building over time? Was it something that just built over time and suddenly, or were you called to it, when you were younger at some point, but put it away? Like, we're really also interested in your individual journey of coming to this work and this awareness. Like you said, we've been trying to fit in to the predominant structure in some way, shape, or form, and now saying no, we're not going to fit in. We're going to center. I'm centering, right? Because as we help others, we're doing it ourselves.
We're here to stand out, right? And that's a great question, sister, because as a second generation immigrant woman, I came here from my country. My birth nation is Sri Lanka, which is a tiny island in the Indian Ocean, directly south of India. We were brought here to fulfill my parents' deepest aspirations for us. And what that meant was slowly sliding into the dominant culture, right? Not make any waves, be chill, and just kind of work super hard, and then your day will come or your time will come. But there came a point where I was tired of that immigrant struggle, right? That narrative of working super, super hard and then waiting for your ship to come in later on, while I felt a lot of women who look like me were being sidelined and were being passed over for white women who were constantly getting these opportunities and who were appropriating my work and my ways and my indigenous culture in their, whether it be their dance or their lyrics or their business models or their speech. and thinking, wait a minute, this is something that's been handed down to me from my ancestors. So why aren't I stepping in and honoring their ways, their traditional knowledge in the way that I have been asked to? Why has this been taken over by the dominant culture? So a lot of it, Vanessa, to answer your question, comes from a place of being completely sick and tired of being passed over, right? It comes from a sacred rage. The master class that I led started off from this place of rage, this place of enoughness, right?
Right.
This place of it's time for us to speak our truth with our fire and stand in our fire instead of keeping apologizing for it,
Yeah.
But that rage turned into a deeper expression of love and devotion, because the expansion and freedom that came after this masterclass, it alchemized that rage and that anger and that frustration into something so beautiful and so genuine and so real. So if I may add, don't be afraid of your rage, sisters. Anyone listening into this, if you're feeling some fear or some anger, trust that, feel into that, because it showed up for you for a reason, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that we need to like speak up and be in that sacred anger, that fire, because I had this these thoughts and these feelings for a while, but I never talked about it with anyone. I've been doing my work. I started my business in 2014. And these were things that I thought, but I thought it was me creating these stories in my head. I'm like, oh, it's just me because I don't think like maybe I'm enough or there's value in my work and all that. But then when I started having these conversations with other women of color, I'm like, okay, now I know I'm not crazy.
That's right.
Yeah, you're not crazy. And then walking into these rooms and you're the only Latina, like I'm the darkest one in the room, and I mean, you still go, but I didn't feel like I fit in a lot of times, and also like hiding my own medicine as well, kind of like whitewashing the work that I know, that I have in my bones, because I need to look a certain way, I need to speak a certain way, and so all these things, and then I did start speaking up more about it, because it becomes, silence is painful.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
really is. So I'm glad that you shared it in such a beautiful way. I love like your expression of like how you express like the love and devotion, and from the master class, it makes me feel like, oh, I want to like watch these videos. I want to like be a part of it. I want to experience it. So I love that you share that with us, and I'm so grateful that you did this summit, so that all these women can be heard, and be in that sacred rage, that it's okay to express that, but it really is deep down love and devotion. So I really love that, because that's really like what I believe in as well.
Amen. Because we're all after liberation. That's the outcome. That is what we're after here, to be liberated from our, from being kind of passed over. And it's time for this. This is the time, I believe, for fire. So let's bring our fire and not shy away from it, right? Sometimes the dismantling of these oppressive structures, there is a joy to it. We don't have to fear it and walk away from it. There is a joy in the dismantle as much as a joy in the building and the constructing. So, but right before we can build, we have to dismantle.
Yeah, and the whole idea, I think that the current, or it's changing now, but the landscape that we've been navigating, whitewashed, white light, we've been ignoring the shadow. And I was raised Catholic, Latina, Espiritismo, and some Santeria. And then I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, so I went to temple, and then moved into Wicca, another pagan and shamanic studies with a Lakota teacher and many other things. And I find that the predominant culture is very afraid of those earthy. It's like, I'll take the feather, I'll take the sage, or I'll take the dance of this culture, but the groundedness, the getting into the roots, getting into the bones, getting into the darkness, not being afraid of it. So I was trained and guided into not being afraid of the dark.
Yes.
In the dark, there's this is where we lay the seeds.
Absolutely.
It's the dark it's when the moon is dark and there is no moon that we are releasing and then placing the intentions for the new cycle.
Yes.
And so I feel that our anger, because we don't know where we're headed to. We believe we're headed to liberation, right? At the same time, with our actions, we don't know when there's another explosion, right? Some other thing that's going to go online, or something that's going to happen. Like, it's almost like we have to be prepared to face more of ourselves. If we want change in this landscape, this is the inner work that we have to do, facing it within ourselves.
Absolutely.
So how would you suggest, to anybody watching who is angry, or, what can you suggest to them? Anything that you've encountered or anything you've learned in the classes, in the master class?
Mm-hmm. What a beautiful question. There was a beautiful sister speaker in my master class. Her name is Uma Girish, and she speaks to this very thing and how to navigate our anger and our grief, right? Because we have to be willing to navigate it and not push it to the side anymore. We have to be willing to look at it square in the eye, right? And a lot of that, I feel, Vanessa, what you're asking us is to dig deeper into our own selves and to heal that part of ourselves that we have ignored for the sake of having to keep pushing forward, right? In our jobs, in our workplaces, in our online spaces. And it's honoring us. I'm speaking to the sisters of color who are listening to this right now. Honor that part of yourself that has been constantly pushed as a sideline. Find out that message encoded inside of you and why that is there. Because if we're not willing to navigate that part of ourselves, then we can't speak to the love, right? And the liberation. We have to honor that within our own selves. And to the white women listening to this, I have to say, this is your time to sit and square up and listen. Listen to what women have to say, what sisters of color have to say, because, this is just where we are in the landscape, right? In order for you to confront your own white privilege, that part of that is listening deeper, listening hard, listening till the end, listening through the discomfort, listening when you screw it up. A lot of the listening that you can do will help also alchemize a lot of these issues that sisters of color are experiencing. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
But again, to the sisters of color, I say, your routine of taking care of yourself, your self-care is so deeply important. Whether it's standing in front of Mama Ocean and just asking her to heal you, right? I also feel, Vanessa, that the self-care industry has become so saturated in consumerism, right? We're being sold this product and that product in order to take care of ourselves, when please don't fall into that trap. It's as simple as just closing your eyes and feeling into your breath every day, Self-care has no look. So, so love yourself up and just be truly loving of yourself. And, we're here to hold you up. Women like Vanessa and Tatiana are here to hold you up when you're ready to speak your truth, So be not afraid.
I love that. When you talked about the commonization of, self-care, healing, I was in shamanic healing once a month. I lived in Europe most of my life, just moved here for love in central Pennsylvania. And so, I had a very big spiritual community that my friend and I created over 2 decades. So it's hard here for me. And So I went to a local shaman's group, and she pulled out a crystal, and somebody at the workshop, said, and she was white. I'm upset with you. You only put one crystal on me when we were in the shamanic healing. This one got 4, this one got 5, this one got 6. And she said, that's the one your spirit was calling for. That was an alignment for you. And she said, please be mindful. And the traditional, most indigenous cultures did not have a box of crystals that they pulled out for each chakra. She said they had like one master crystal. I have one right here. Said they had one master crystal, and that was the crystal that was sometimes gifted to them, right? And that's the one that they used throughout their life, and that's what it was so connected to that particular healer, and it was honored because it was in that energy. She said, so it's not about, we all love crystals, but it's not about the 50 million. It doesn't make you better because you have this crystal or that crystal wand. And so I just wanted to share that because it came up, and the woman's like, oh, wow, okay. So she got it, that this one was powerful enough. It's like, you don't need 10. It doesn't make
That's
you.
right. That's right. I don't know where that all began, so much of the indigenous um, culture has been just completely appropriated, and somehow women have felt that the more modalities I have, or the more things I accumulate, then the more I'll ascend, or the more I'll, spiritually reach, a certain nirvana. It's not that. It's actually simplifying your spiritual process.
Yeah. Yes. I was talking to a client very beautiful person, who's sending me a lot of different links to things. And what do you think of this? And I said, I'll be honest with you. I started this journey as a teen quite a long time ago. And, but it just, I learned so much in the beginning. I was like a little maniac. But I also realized, and I think a lot of women might relate to this, that at some point you're reading and you're like, I remember this. Underneath the words, underneath the classes, there was like something else going, remember, you're not learning, you're remembering.
Yeah.
And so
Indeed.
I don't need to. And I love to study, but I was like, there came a point where I was like less out there, more in here.
Yes, ma'am.
Silence of TV or silence of this, even music that I love. But I tell my boyfriend I don't like to have TV on all day or anything or any noise, because I need to listen. There's a lot going on in here.
Yes.
It's wanting to be heard. So for all the women also watching, allowing, not being afraid to be guided by our inner voices are worthy. Our inner voices are deserving. And we've been taught to give our power away, and that the outside is what's powerful, right?
Absolutely.
So
I love what you said about remembering. That's right. That's what my journey has been about, is remembering beautiful ancestral wisdom and traditional knowledge that's been handed down to me from my grandmother and her grandmother. And it's being completely in alignment with that versus with some external modality, right? That somebody has convinced us that we need, or somebody else's blueprint or model that often doesn't feel in alignment, that feels a little off. Well, no wonder, right? Because we've forgotten our own way, and we've lost our own selves in order to assimilate into this dominant culture. So I love the unlearning and the unraveling that's happening for women of color in that, sisters. There's so much unraveling and unlearning happening. And that healing process sometimes can seem very loud. Oh, it sounds like rage. And we have to allow that to be, I feel. We have to allow space for that in order for the love to emerge from it. So, yes, thank you for sharing that, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Tatiana, do you have any questions for Sonali?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask, because since we're on topic of still on sacred rage, how do you feel about like in social media? I've been seeing like back and forth, like attacks and shaming, you know, and I'm all about calling out people and, you know, and expressing and your feelings and all that. But some things are like really, really like harsh, and I'm like, whoa, like name calling, words like bitch and all these things. Is there a fine line? I mean, like what, like it's hard for me to navigate. That's why I kind of stay away, because some things are just like, whoa, that was like really like not cool. Because, you know, I'm about sacred rage, but I also believe in compassion as well.
I agree.
And I don't know, I don't know. I just want to hear from you, like.
Yes, sister. What a good question, because it's tricky. We're all online entrepreneurs. It's a tricky space because somehow the gap between our response time and what has been said has completely, it's non-existent. We feel this immediate need to react. And Dr. Amanda Kemp, who was a speaker on my masterclass that I mentioned, she talked about, not falling prey to that process, this snap judgment or the snap reaction, that it is okay to step away, take a breath and to speak from your lived experience, right? Versus falling into the trap of, going, before you know it, you're down a rabbit hole, but to speak your truth from your lived experience, right? And then not fall prey to that back and forth, which is very reactionary, and which is also very it's just very draining, sisters. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It drains your soul, and before you know it, you've given so much of your power away that you really don't have anything left for yourself or your own clients or for your own audience. So I feel you, Tatiana. I do understand that, like I said, this is a time for speaking our truth and, unleashing that rage. But I feel that that comes with responsibility. That if we are to speak from that space, then it comes with greater responsibility, right? Meaning we have to really take ownership of it. And I see this happening so much. This is the time where everybody we're in the speak out culture, right? The Me Too movement has allowed women to really speak up and speak out. But if everybody's speaking out, then who's doing the listening,
Yeah.
So if our speaking out and speaking up does not include our sacred listening, then that is when the balances are off.
Yeah.
So we have to listen deeper, listen harder, listen till the end, listen through the discomfort. We don't get to just speak our, just that and then walk away. We have to sit through the discomfort.
Yeah.
And so I hope that helps. I'm navigating this truth too, Tatiana, to be honest. I don't profess to have the answers to the questions that I am seeking too.
Yeah.
So, but I'm trusting the deeper way, honoring my ancestors, because how I respond to these questions or issues that come up in our online spaces is what my descendants are going to have to feel into, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're receiving. So I'm deeply aware that how I respond affects my descendants. So having that awareness too, bringing that, just to pause and bring that, center that before we hit enter, I think can be deeply helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So far I haven't been involved in any discussions. It's more of like what I'm seeing, from like other people's pages.
Yes.
And I had to take a social media break, actually, because
that's a good one too, Tatiana.
Yeah, because it was just so much. I noticed that I was depleted and so tired, and I'm like, why am I drained? And then I'm like, it has to be these issues that are going on in social media, which is good because I'm learning also. I'm aware, and I'm speaking up too. But I'm like, okay, now I need to step back because my work like it's not, I'm not, I'm not an activist, that's not part of my work, so like what use am I going to be if I'm tired for my clients and my business, I still got to take care of myself,
Yes.
like I come first. So that's when I started realizing, okay, I need to like not get too, because it gets obsessive. You want to like read everyone's,
Yes.
you want to hear people's voices.
Yes, I love that, Tatiana. What you're speaking about is having some very clear boundaries
Yes.
for yourself, right? Establishing that and being very clear about what your boundaries are, so that even if you are on the receiving end of some of these attacks or a response is required of you, you already have these boundaries set up so you know how to respond, when to respond, or even if you choose to respond. That sovereignty is really in our hands, right? We get to choose that. You don't get to tell me when to respond or how. I choose that for myself.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes I get tagged and I just don't respond. I'm like, I can't. Nope.
And that is good for you.
I love that. I love how you brought up sacred listening, sacred speaking.
Oh yeah.
And also sacred boundaries.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that we don't care, but it also means that we are in touch with our own needs and what is happening within us. And I love what you said. We choose when, how, and if we want to respond. So for anybody watching who's been feeling this turmoil or overwhelm, or maybe the instant, writing and like sending, and then maybe regretting a little bit, a deeper invitation, to honor your sacred rage and also to honor your boundaries and when and if and how we respond. And so before we close, is there anything that you would like to, I mean, you've said so much and you've said it so beautifully, Sonali. Is there anything that you would like to impart to women of color who are watching about how do we center, or how do we step into that from your own experience or from working, with your clients? How can we step into it? I know that we talked about doing things like this type of conversation, creating telesummits. What are other ways that women who maybe don't have an online business or are going to create a telesummit, that they can begin to center themselves, right? In these conversations, rather than stepping aside and allowing or being marginalized or placed to the side.
Yes. What a great question, Vanessa. And I will speak to the women who might be listening in, feeling like they're still sitting on this fence or not feeling fully ready to emerge with their truth or with their words. I get it. It's scary right now to be seen and to be full on out there. I get it. It's shifting so much. So I have so much compassion for you, sister, who's listening in, feeling like this is too much. Who are deep empaths or feel like they're taking in a barrage of, newness. Just trust whatever it is emerging for you. Take your time. This is not a race, Be willing to feel into your divine right alignment and timing, and please don't compare yourself to anybody else who's on the online space, because what we're doing by doing that is comparing our internal journey to another sister's external journey. And that makes no sense, right? So honor where you are in your process, which goes against everything that mentors have told me. Mentors have always told me that, oh, you got to get out there, you got to be visible, you got to, be loud, and you got to follow this model. If you follow this blueprint, you will have success. So a mentor listening into this probably is doing a face palm right now, but I'm asking you to honor your deeper way, trust yourself and the journey you're on, and take your time. And when you feel ready, know that there are sisters out there like Vanessa and Tatiana and even Sonali Fiske who've got your back, who has this hand waiting for you to kind of guide you and show you, how it can be. So take your time. I think that's my message, Vanessa. Be willing to trust your instincts, to
Yeah.
trust your process and not somebody else's.
Thank you. Thank you. And that is really, we center by centering within ourselves. And that is key. That is key. So thank you, Sonali. Thank you.
You.
Oh, so
Thank you.
beautiful to connect with you and just to be in this energy, I feel, of lots of love, compassion, and devotion to our expansion. And our expansion doesn't look like everybody else's, it is ours. And so thank you for highlighting that. So,
My privilege and my honor.
yeah,
Thank you for having me.
yeah, just so glad you said yes. And so thank you so much for sharing your story, Sonali, your message. Your voice matters to us. And we see you, sister. We hear you. We appreciate you. And for all those who are watching, listening, who are exploring their sacred speaking out, their sacred boundaries, their sacred listening, right? So important. If everyone's speaking out, as Sonali said, who's listening, let us be those who listen deeply and honor that. If you found this informative, inspirational, useful, please share this video. It will be free, and it is www.elevatevoices.com. We are going to, have it online, available, and this is our service to you and to the world, and to just adding our little droplet, our little ripple of change. So thank you for all you do, Sonali. Thank you, Tatiana, Christine,
Thank you. Thank you so
and for all
Thank
of
you
the wonderful.
both.
Thank you so much.
It's been a joy.